Welcome, everyone, to our January 4th, 2022 Board of Education regular meeting. All board members are in attendance, as well as Mr. Blumberg, our attorney, and Superintendent Moore. We are going to, now that we've established a quorum, we're going to stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you very much. We will begin with Superintendent Moore's comments.
Good evening, Chair Mahaffey, board members. I'll begin with congratulations to Keith Richardson, principal of Knightdale High and our reigning Principal of the Year, who was recently named the 2022 Wells Fargo North Central Regional Principal of the Year. He was surprised with the news last month during a special meeting with his staff. I had the honor of attending the celebration as well, along with Mr. Richardson's proud parents, Chair Mahaffey, board members Scott and Kushner, and other special guests from the selection committee. Mr. Richardson is now one of 9 finalists for the title of North Carolina Principal of the Year, which will be announced this spring. In earning both of these awards, Mr. Richardson has received praise from his colleagues, students, and families for his servant leadership, for inspiring high achievement among his staff and then celebrating their success, and for his commitment to strengthening Knightdale High's relationship with the community. He has a long track record of successful leadership in our district, serving as principal of Crossroads Flex and York Elementary prior to moving to Knightdale High in 2019. I'm grateful to Mr. Richardson for his years of service to our students and staff, and can think of no one more deserving of these honors. Congratulations are also in order for Zoe Grove. Ms. Grove is the 2020-2021 Diane Kent Parker first-year teacher winner for middle school, and was recently selected as a finalist for the 2022 North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year Award. As a finalist, the 7th grade math teacher at Westlake Middle will attend the Beginning Teacher of the Year program in February on the campus of the North Carolina Center for Advancement of Teaching in Cullowhee. During the February retreat, she will be able to participate in leadership sessions and learn best practices from her peer teachers. The statewide winner will be announced during the retreat on February 17th. The North Carolina Beginning Teacher of the Year Award, as well as our own Diane Kent Parker Award, was developed to honor beginning teachers and to retain teachers who show exceptional promise as education leaders. One of our strategic plan core beliefs is that well-supported, highly effective, and dedicated teachers are essential to success for all students. It is more critical than ever to ensure we attract and retain our best and brightest young teachers to ensure the success of future generations. Congratulations to Ms. Grove for being a model of what effective and dedicated teachers should be. Finally, January is National Mentoring Month, and our Office of Equity Affairs will be honoring and celebrating the many outstanding mentors who serve our students through the Helping Hands Mentoring Program. Mentors are educators, administrators, and other employees who invest their time and energy to support groups of students. Evidence-based mentoring is linked to multiple improved outcomes for young people. In a national report called The Mentoring Effect, young people who had a mentor were 55% more likely to attend college than peers who were equally at risk for not completing high school. Students with mentors also were 81% more likely to report participating regularly in sports or an extracurricular activity, 78% more likely to volunteer regularly in their communities, and more than twice as likely to say they held a leadership position in a club or sports team. Helping Hands mentors are ordinary people who are making an extraordinary difference. My thanks to all who give their time to counsel, support, and encourage our students. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. We've had first off, Happy New Year and welcome back. Certainly had a interesting start to 2020 for our traditional calendar and track 1, 2, and 3 students. And welcoming back all of our folks. I guess track 4 we'll see a little bit later on. I hope everyone had time to relax and have some calm and respite over the break. During our work session, we talked about updates to our legislative agenda and also about the vacancy that we now have in our board in District 4. And we had a timeline that went out. The vacancy will be on our website tomorrow, the advertisement rather. All application documents should be submitted by January 12th at 5 p.m. And on January 14th, we will have a special called board meeting for the vacancy and interview candidates and potentially a vote to get someone into that position. In addition to that, we've also scheduled our retreat for the 21st and 22nd of this month and look forward to more discussion and moving towards the strategic plan with board members. And I thank you all for your conversation and your commitment to this and your flexibility as we moved through this. Vice Chair Haggerty.
Thank you. Again, Happy New Year. Welcome back, everyone. I don't have too much to add to Chair Mahaffey's comments. I do want to say that, again, I'm looking forward to the board retreat. I think these are valuable opportunities for us to get together, to talk as peers, talk as colleagues, and also talk with senior staff, and really talk about what our vision for the school board is and for what we can do to shape the vision of Wake County schools and the education of our kids in our community. And we've had a lot on our plate, but it's been too long since we've been able to really open up and have those discussions and really push that. So I do thank everybody for working with us to get a time when we could attend, and really I'm looking forward to your participation in that. One of the things I believe, I haven't seen the agenda yet, but I believe we'll be talking about will be developing and working on our new strategic plan and where we move forward. If we can have a theme for 2022, it needs to be about progress and moving forward. I think everybody has been here long, has been here in this sense of just kind of frustration about not being able to move forward with all of the things that we would like to do and like to see. And I really want to pledge to you all and ask that you work with each other to be productive, to move forward, and do what we can for everybody in the community. Thanks.
Ms. Johnson-Hustler?
I don't like this round. I don't go next. That's how I'm going to start off the comments. Happy New Year and welcome back. Very brief comments. I ended the year on a strong note. My last day of work and school board business was on the 17th, and I got the great opportunity to read to my last day and give my last books to my 5 students that I had the opportunity to read with all last semester, and got to see arts in action at one of my elementary schools, which, much like going first, I had also not planned to play the drum or dance or sing. But again, the things that little people can make you do when they smile their little batting eyes at you. So again, I'm fortunate to have had that carry me through the holiday season. And welcome back to work.
Ms. Cash?
Just Happy New Year as well. I actually started out my Christmas having the flu the whole week of Christmas and the following, which I got from my grandkids, but don't tell them I said that. But I actually got well, have negative tests for COVID and flu, so I'm good. And my boss said get back to work, so I went back on New Year's Day. So I'm ready to start a new year. Thank you.
Ms. Carter?
All right, thank you. And I just wanted to start off, and yes, Happy New Year, and we're back. I feel like it's been quite a while since we've been here, and there's been so much that's happened. And for me, I just wanted first to start out by a note on, just for clarifications, because I feel like we get a lot of emails sometimes, and sometimes it's easier just to make a public comment. And I just wanted to clarify, because we recently this week about weather days. And just so folks know, that is not a board vote nor a board decision, because I think there were some clarifying emails that I was thankfully able to send to help folks understand, because I think it is hard to know sometimes what is decided by the board and what is not. So that's how I'll start things, but then I want to go to a different way. I wanted to point out several events that I did attend before, because there were just so many right before, I feel like, the winter break started, and then some during the winter break, because our students are many of them were still quite active over the break, especially athletes and those in extracurriculars. So I first wanted to shout out the students in the Reedy Creek beginning band and their director, Ms. Torres. The students, there's a list here, sorry guys. Students in the West Cary middle school beginning and concert bands, and their director, who also got on stage and performed, played the drums, Mr. Anderson. And it was a unique experience because after that concert at West Cary, the art teacher, Mr. Miller, had put together an mini art gallery of some of the art students' work. So that was a nice kind of a evening of the arts. And also the students at Davis Drive Middle School and the director of dance, Ms. Winans, and those who filled in for Santa and worked on their Santa kicks, shall we say. If you've seen the show, you would know. And just did a great job. And also the Cary High School Navy Junior ROTC cadets and their commander, Gregory Erickson, for their important role at the Wreaths Across America event. And also, continuing with Cary High, I'm told this wrestling tournament makes it known it's time for the winter break. That is the Sergeant Mark Adams wrestling tournament at Cary High School. And, you know, I'm trying to get to a lot of these. And their coach, Jerry Winterton, and all of the wrestlers, it was a great event. Couldn't go to both days, but went to the morning event. The morning session of one of those days. And I really just want to thank all of the volunteers, whether they're members of the public, those family members, and anyone who helps make these athletic events, extracurricular events possible for our students, just because it helps our students so much. Not only it is, you know, a lot of times I hear from folks who are concerned about academics, and I see these as connected. A lot of times these programs are actually what help motivate our students and help keep them connected, and keep them going with their academics, not only with us, but perhaps further on down the line, whether it's at community college, four-year college, or in some of our armed forces. So I just wanted to thank everyone for all your support of these programs. And then I know we've also been hearing quite a bit from folks about remote learning, and I just wanted to take a moment to share for those who are wanting more information on the topic, for some parameters that districts work with, and that is, if you want to just look up or reach out, I'll be happy to share the link. That's Senate Bill 654, and pages 2 and 3 will share you some parameters that have been sent out or set by our state, and it is signed into law around remote learning. And I just, you know, I personally believe and support daily in-person instruction, just because so many of our students struggled significantly with remote learning, whether it was academic, engagement, or mental health issues. And I just wanted to share that in case folks are wanting more information about it. So that's basically everything I have. And thanks for folks joining us, and hopefully, as we move forward, more can. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kushner.
Thank you, Chairman Happy, and Happy New Year to everyone. I want to thank everyone who came to the December 16th Board Advisory Council meeting for District 6, and specifically to Oberlin Middle School that opened their auditorium for us. We had a great presentation from Tim Lavalle from Wake Ed Partnership, and he highlighted not only the summary of state and school funding in North Carolina, but also announced that Tools for Schools, and that grand opening is going to be on the 13th of January. So very grateful to Wake Ed Partnership for supporting our educators at this time and helping support by gathering materials from the community that teachers can access. So thanks to Wake Ed for all they do for Wake County.
Dr. Martin.
Thank you. I too want to wish everyone a happy new year and a successful new year. I think it's also really important that we recognize the challenges that we're facing immediately. I think sometimes in education we suffer from what some people describe as almost the destructive positivity, where we act as though everything's going to be normal and everything's going to be all right. But we're facing significant challenges, and I think we need to be candid about that. Specifically with respect to COVID. Cases are spiking at an insane rate. The latest data reported by the Wake County Public Health Department for the last 7-day average is 1,615 cases per 100,000 population. That means 1.6% of the Wake County population tested positive for COVID last week. When you break that down from the North Carolina Health and Human Services data, which is delayed but breaks it down by age cohort, their last report was when we were at 1,574 cases per 100,000 population for all of Wake County. At that time, the 5 to 9-year-olds reported 1,235 cases per 100,000 population. The 10 to 14-year-olds reported a rate of 1,421 per 100,000 population. The 15 to 17-year-olds reported a rate of 1,648 per 100,000 population. For reference, the CDC, and the reason I give these numbers, the CDC has indicated that anything over 100 cases per 100,000 population in a week represents high transmission. And that's whether it's a COVID virus or any other virus. So we're looking at more than 10 times what is considered a high rate of transmission. I haven't always reported because the student cases have been higher than the general population cases, but the 25 to 49-year-olds, which is the general age group of most of our staff, were at 2,062 cases per 100,000 population. That means over 2% of our staff age population tested positive for COVID last week. Those numbers are escalating at an exponential rate, so we need to be prepared for a large number of our staff, not just our students, not being able to be doing their jobs because they will have to be out because they are out sick. There's a lot that goes around these days saying that, oh, it's not that bad. That's a choice that some people may make. But to say that it's not that bad fails to recognize that the last daily average of deaths in North Carolina were 32 deaths per day. Nationwide, that's 1,337 deaths per day. In context, in 2.25 days, that's equivalent to the number of deaths in the 9/11 Trade Towers attacks. To say that that's not significant, I cannot agree with. This is a significant illness that is causing significant deaths, and most projections are looking at we'll hit probably 1 million deaths by the end of January. That's not something that I take lightly. But even if you do take it lightly, if 2 to 5% of any organization's staff is out sick with a mild flu, that organization will have a difficult time operating. It is highly likely that that is what we're going to be looking at in the next 1 to 2 weeks. I'm not sitting here saying we need to shut down. I am saying that as a board and as a staff, we need to be seriously planning as to what we will do, because all indications are there's a high probability that at least 2 to 5% of our staff will be out in the coming weeks. How will we operate? Now, some will make the absolute statements that schools are the safest place for children. And that may be the case in some conditions. But it is equally the case that schools are not necessarily the safest place for all children. There are sincere concerns from many in the public about sending their children back into settings where, with the infectivity of Omicron, it is almost certain that many more children will get infected. The chances are almost certain that we're going to see a major spike in cases in our schools. Does that mean we should shut down? I'm not arguing for that. I'm arguing that we need to start thinking very seriously of a plan, because where we're at right now, we are requiring that everyone must attend school. If you are concerned about sending your child to school, for which there can be very legitimate reasons to have that concern, your child will be marked absent, and it will likely be an unexcused absence because we don't have a clause that allows for that. So what we're doing by our current policy is we're saying everything must stay open and everyone must be there. We are not recognizing the reality that there are decisions that say my child needs to be in school, and there are legitimate reasons to say my child does not need to be in school. So I raise all these issues because I think it's past time that we have a very candid and careful conversation with strategic planning. We're looking, all projections are that we're going to see a continued dramatic rise for the next 1 to 2 weeks, and then it will be at least a 2-week decline for the cases to come back down. This is going to have staffing implications. This is going to have implications for all of our students. We need to come up with a plan. We need to come up with a plan that respects the families who are very concerned about sending their children back. And at a minimum, I believe we need to create a scenario where we have some accommodation for excused absences for this reason. We've got a lot of planning work that needs to be done. We can hope it will go away. I hope all my predictions are wrong. They have not proved to be yet.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. Happy New Year to everyone. My family enjoyed a very low-key break thanks to vaccines and access to testing. My kiddos were able to spend the Christmas break with their grandparents. Both my parents are very immunocompromised, so we try to do everything we can with safety around them. So it was nice to have a little bit of time with them. And other than that, we just enjoyed not having a schedule. So it was very nice to have that. I have also received lots of emails from people concerned. I appreciate, Ms. Carter, you explaining where Senate Bill 654 can be referred to in terms of what we can and cannot do. I know as a parent with 2 kids who've been in school now for 2 days, I've done everything that I can do, and I'm confident in vaccines protecting them as well as they can be. I'm thankful that we are able to send them in kids' KN95 masks and an appropriate multi-layer cloth mask that our pediatrician recommended as well. So that's where we're doing our best, but I do have to say my heart does go out to the folks who are taking care of our kids and in our schools right now. This has been an extraordinarily stressful year for everyone who works inside of those buildings in every role. I was thinking about this book I loved as a child. It was called Maxie, and I think the book was actually supposed to do with elder care considerations for aging people, but it was about a woman who lived alone, and she made her tea every morning, and she opened the blinds, and that made her little bird sing and all of these little things, and she'd go down and get her mail and always lock herself out of her apartment and have to go up to the super to get let back in, and one day she said, you know what, I'm tired of doing all this. I'm going to take the day off. So she just stayed in bed. And by the end of the day, she had like 30 people at her door. Like, what's going on? And people said, well, when you didn't do this, that's part of my routine. I was waiting for you to make your tea kettle. That's when I know it's time to get my kids up for school. And the superintendent said, when you come and knock on my door because you locked yourself out, that's when I usually go do this. And I feel like sometimes right now all of us probably don't realize the value that we have with each other, but especially I think some of our school employees, they need to feel valued. So I do hope that we can understand that the role that we play is important. I hope that our educators, all of our school employees from bus drivers know that they're important, not just in serving our students, but because I firmly still believe our public schools are just the critical, most important part of the democratic society that we live in. It is part of a democracy. It is part of what makes us special and unique for our children to have access to strong public education and all of the lessons that they learn inside of those buildings that are absolutely related to those core subjects, but also the important parts of how we become a strong society and ultimately a strong country, and ideally one that cares for each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
So
Chairman,
moved. Please, Vice
go
Chair.
right ahead.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Johnson Hostler, a second by Vice Chair Haggerty. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have our information item, which is our superintendent updates. Superintendent Moore?
Good evening again. I'll highlight just very quickly the two items from the work session and then one additional item that we communicated to staff and families over the break. The first item that was discussed in the work session today was really to review the board's 21-22 legislative agenda, to review which items had been addressed through legislation in the previous session, and to look at revisions and updates that could be incorporated for the upcoming short session of the legislature that will be taking place. The second item reviewed in work session was the timeline and the advertising and process for filling the District 4 vacancy board seat. So that all of those materials are in Assembly if folks are interested in looking at them. You should be seeing the posting for that vacancy public sometime tomorrow. And then the last item that I wanted to touch base on is over the break, during the winter break, North Carolina DHHS updated its Strong Schools North Carolina Toolkit, and they specifically updated the quarantine guidance. That information will go before the state board this week, so we expect it to be fully adopted. There may be some other changes that are discussed or adopted by the state board this week as they continually are reviewing. This particular guidance on quarantines reduced quarantines to 5 days or less, which I think is a positive sign in terms of what we're seeing in our schools and making sure that we are maintaining that priority on daily in-person instruction. So it was good to see those changes. We went ahead and sent them out right away to our principals and to our families. We sent it out again this week just as a reminder so that folks could see it. And I think the board received, I think Jonathan maybe sent the pages that have all of the changes and the chart that includes everything, because we get asked about it so often, so that you have that available as well. So we continue to look forward to additional changes as additional data is reviewed that provides and supports for the priority that we have to both be safely in schools and maintain daily in-person instruction. Those are my updates.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. Our next information item concerns naming the track at Enloe Magnet High School. And for that, we have Dr. Ashley Thompson and Principal Dr. Jackie Jordan, and others.
Good evening, Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, members of the board. I'm here this evening to introduce the principal of Enloe Magnet High School, Dr. Jackie Jordan. Dr. Jordan will be sharing details regarding a request to name the track at Enloe Magnet High School after a now deceased educator who served WCPSS in multiple schools, including Enloe. We will be seeking your approval of this request, which will take place later this evening as part of your consent agenda. Dr. Jordan.
Good evening, Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, and Wake County Board members, Wake County Public School System Board members. I'm here tonight on behalf of our Enloe Magnet High School Eagles Athletic Booster Club to request the Enloe track be named after the late Richard Leo Barfield Jr. I'd like to introduce you to my friend, Reverend Dr. Cynthia Barfield. Also, I have our athletic director, Drew Womble, and my fellow Enloe principal, Dr. Will Chavis. I've had the honor of learning about Mr. Barfield and his strong connection to the Enloe community. Reverend Dr. Barfield described to me the memories of meeting on the site of what is now the Enloe track, even before she and Richard were students at Enloe. It was the gathering place for kids and adults alike from the surrounding neighborhood. It was the place where people would meet, a special place that brought people together to make plans, solve problems, and connect as members of a shared community. It was a place for young people to come and talk about issues of the day. The track was the place. The track was the place that people could go when there were no other places, such as the Boys and Girls Club where people might go today. "Let's meet at Enloe" was a popular refrain. As Richard and Cynthia got older, their connectedness to the school and to that sacred place only grew stronger. Dreams they had, like of having a girls' track team, for instance, turned into action on that field, and Richard Barfield, his friends and family, were instrumental in making that happen. As the years went by, the track continued to be a gathering place for those connected to the school and the surrounding Enloe community. We would like to ask that the track be named for Richard Barfield because of his leadership to that community that started as a young man mentoring athletes on the track, but continuing on into his professional career, where he served in numerous coaching and teaching roles within the Wake County Public School System for nearly 30 years. Dr. Barfield, Reverend Dr. Barfield, recalls the many ways that Richard connected with his students beyond the classroom and the field, sometimes even answering calls late into the night and leaving home to respond to a child in need. Richard clearly had what we now refer to as his why, and embodied it through his service to his students, even outside the classroom and off the field. That did not stop when he retired from Wake County Public School System. Richard Barfield continued to find ways to strengthen his community and provide service to others in all that he did in the years following his life as a teacher, a coach, and an athletic director. Richard volunteered with Helping Hands, Hope Mentoring, Be Active North Carolina, and many other organizations and initiatives designed to help promote academic success, health, and wellness for others. In naming our track after Richard Barfield Jr., we honor his outstanding lifelong service. As school leaders, we aspire to make our schools truly part of our community and to create the kind of connectedness that Mr. Barfield fostered and maintained. His efforts are woven throughout the neighborhood, but all roads lead back to the field. It remains a special place for so many because of his legacy, and it is our hope that by naming the track after him, we remind all the past members of our school of their sense of belonging. As Reverend Dr. Barfield said to me, it is more than just a school. For so many, it is home. We appreciate all that Richard did to establish that sacred space as a home for students and to maintain it as such a space once those students grew up and had families of their own. We look forward to keeping that sense of connectedness to our community and honoring his legacy in this most deserving way. With enthusiasm, I support the request to name the Enloe track the Richard Leo Barfield Jr. track. This request meets the requirement of the Wake County Public School System Board Policy 9300 for naming of a school facility. Additionally, the Enloe Magnet High School Eagles Athletic Booster Club will work in tandem with Wake County Public School System facilities staff to ensure any fiscal implications will be funded by the Booster Club from private donations. At this time, we are requesting the board's approval to name the Enloe track the Richard Leo Barfield Jr. track. Thank you for considering this proposal, and thank you for your support of our school.
Thank you, Dr. Jordan. Reverend Dr. Barfield, it's very clear the impact that your husband and you have had on this community, and I know we are very excited to have this vote so that we're able to honor him properly at Enloe High School for all of his contributions. Thank you for being here tonight. And thank you, Mr. Womble and Dr. Chavis, for showing up and sharing your support. Thank you. That is the end of our information items. Up next is public comment. Properly worn face coverings are required for those attending Board of Education meetings. During the public comment session, you may speak for up to 3 minutes. You'll see a yellow light at the podium when you have 30 seconds remaining and a red light when your time is up. Speakers are welcome to offer comments or criticism directed at some substantive ideas or actions, procedures of the board and individual board members. In the interest of maintaining civility and decorum, however, speakers are encouraged to refrain from personal attacks and insults directed at the board, individual board members, staff members, or members of the general public. The laws and policies of North Carolina provide that issues or concerns involving individual personnel matters are confidential and therefore not appropriate for public comment settings. Concerns related to personnel issues may be addressed through applicable WCPSS personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. Speakers, including students, may discuss issues and matters of general concern, but should refrain from discussing confidential student information. Concerns are related to confidential student matters may be addressed through applicable WCPSS personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. Public comment is accepted in writing, via video, or in person during regular meetings of the full board. And our written public comments, I believe there were no video comments this time. We have 53 written comments from the public. The topics are as follows: 35 on COVID preventative measures, including the mask mandate, supporting and opposing. 4 for procedures for inclement weather. 3 for the December 7th audit meeting. 3 for board meeting restrictions, and 8 others, including youth mental health, supports for high school students, strategic plan, inclusion of the disabled and Hispanics, policies, statistics and science, reporting fraud, and optional remote learning. Our first speaker this evening is Caitlin Lewis Honeycutt.
Stand over here.
Hi, my name is Kaylin. I'm in 4th grade at A.B. Combs Leadership Elementary. I have really enjoyed my school and learning about the 7 habits of leadership. My favorite habit is think, win, win, because I like to be happy and see my friends happy at school to be happy too. I am here to speak about what school has been like through this pandemic. I used to be happy going to school every day to see my teachers and my friends. School is not fun anymore because there are no smiles to look forward to. I cannot tell what anyone is feeling, and it is hard to understand my teacher. School is also not fun anymore because we do not get to do hands-on activities anymore. When I wear a mask, I feel like I cannot breathe. My mask makes me feel dizzy and gross because it gets wet. My mask gives me headaches and causes me to throw up in school. When I have a mask on, it makes me feel sad. I cannot see my teacher or teachers' or classmates' feelings or faces. In the cafeteria, we have to sit 6 seats away and are constantly told to put our bellies to the table. In PE, we have to wear a mask, and we had to do the pacer test, which is where you ran around 50 laps across the gym with a mask on. Everyone was huffing and puffing, and everyone felt lightheaded. Now that I'm in 4th grade, I get to do chorus. I love to sing. It is hard to see how my teacher's mouth is moving with a mask on. It is also hard to sing and get full breath with my mask on. I do not have to wear a mask anywhere else except school, even at the anti-state games. So why do we have to keep wearing these things in school? I need to see faces. I remember the fun times at school when my mom could come in and volunteer in my classroom. This was a win-win because I got to see her, and she was also helping my teacher out. I also liked when she would surprise me for lunch. We got to sit at a booth, and I got to invite a friend over to have lunch with us. My question is, when are we going to go to school without a mask on? When will school feel fun and safe again? When can I be close to my friends? When can my mom be allowed to volunteer again? Why won't you approve my mask mandate form? Please, think win-win for me and every student.
Our next speaker is Jessica Lewis.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year. 2022 is the year for great education, medical choice, and change on the school board. I have spoken here several times voicing my concerns. It did not take me long to realize that you do not care what parents have to say. Providing public comment is a wasted breath. So why do I continue to attend? Because 150,000 children are affected by your lack of leadership. I cannot be silent in this madness. Providing comment is also pointless because there is no two-way dialogue. We, the parents, voice our concerns, but you do not provide feedback, reasoning, or answers. I challenge you to have an open dialogue with parents who would like a response to their unanswered questions. We want to know why you will not acknowledge the mental health of our children. The American Academy of Pediatrics recently declared a national state of emergency with regard to children's mental health. My 7-year-old son is yet to have a normal year of school. The pandemic started in his kindergarten year. He was just getting used to the classroom structure and was beginning to find that school could be fun. I saw early on virtual schooling was affecting my son's mental health and causing him to shut down to the point of extreme anger, anxiety, and telling me he wants to die. He says he hates school and he hates his life. He is 7. He struggles with finding joy in school due to social distancing and being reprimanded if his mask is not on properly. In carpool line, he does anything possible to avoid going to school. He has even gone so far as to stripping his pants and shirt off to avoid going in the building, which should feel safe but feels like torture to him. The pressure and stress of wearing his mask, social distancing, and trying to catch up educationally has taken a drastic toll on his growing brain. This will forever impact him in how he feels about school, teachers, and those in authority. Your claim to accept medical mask exemptions, you claim to accept them, but they are a waste of paper. My son has an IEP in speech and cyclic vomiting syndrome. He has a signed mask exemption form from his pediatrician stating that due to his medical conditions, he should not wear a face covering in school as it could cause harm and dangerously obstruct his breathing. Yesterday morning, he had a vomiting episode. His condition is anxiety related, and why should our children feel this anxious about going to school? I received a letter this year stating that my son has missed too many days. Yes, he has missed days due to his anxiety episodes. Y'all are not recognizing how overwhelming school makes our children feel now. Why is a principal permitted to override a medical doctor? School staff are acting outside the scope of practice when they begin making medical decisions. This is a huge liability for Wake County, and it needs to stop. My daughter, Caitlin, who also has a signed mask exemption, being denied, I challenge you to look her in the eye and tell her that her diagnosis, fears, and feelings do not matter. Tell her that her doctor's orders do not matter. Tell her that your COVID money is more important than her education and mental health. Tell her the truth. Buckle up. This is the year where parents take back our public school system, November 8th.
Thank you. Shelley Peel.
So you've heard of a lot of concerns from parents here, but what does the general population think of COVID? Well, let's take a look. ABC published on December 31st, North Carolina shatters record high COVID-19 daily positivity rate. Sensationalist headlines. So here are some of the comments. There are 100. They're all pretty similar. This is what the public says. So right after they broke a record for as many tests performed, could it be cause and effect? Keep fueling the fears. No one is listening. Find real news. Even with all these people vaccinated? No way. Oh my, I think we'd all run for the hills if COVID wasn't everywhere to get us. Oh yes, I noticed the bodies piled up outside the home earlier. How many are dying? Are we just going to act like life should stop because of a runny nose? Yet here we are still taking the same failed advice from the same so-called experts, getting the same failed results and blaming our fellow citizens. Oh my God, we're all going to die today again. Guess wearing the mask doesn't stop the virus, or we wouldn't have that many cases, so why are we wearing them? So as you can see, the narrative has changed. You know, this isn't people ignoring science. It's not being selfish. It's not being lazy. It's the fact that as much as our hubris would like us to believe we can control and maintain the spread of a virus, measures like masks are not working. You get no credit for impacting the spread of COVID based on the decisions you make on our little micro population. But you do get full credit for the loss of learning from in-person school shutdowns and the mental anxiety, depression, and lack of social connection from mask wearing. That's what you own. American Pediatrics recently declared a national state of emergency for children's mental health. NBC News highlighted North Carolina schools as one of the hardest hit for academic loss because we had the longest shutdowns. And this is a problem you guys have helped create. But the narrative is changing. CDC just cut isolation recommendations significantly, even with Omicron spreading. The narrative is changing. The reasons for continuing to enforce mask wearing is dwindling. 73.3% of the eligible population is fully vaccinated. So what are you waiting for? We should follow the lead of the Classical Christian Conservatory of Alexandria. They said they will not tolerate disruptive rolling classroom shutdowns, adding, we cannot allow the success of our mission to be contingent upon the ebb and flow of this virus. They're treating COVID equivalent to other illnesses. This is what we need as our new narrative. No longer should our kids with the least risk continue to pay the greatest price. Thank you.
Steve Bergstrom.
Good evening. Happy New Year. The negative impact of extended shutdowns and mandates have negatively impacted Wake County students probably more than anywhere else. Newest data from the North Carolina Department of Instruction shows that 16% of ninth graders, approximately 2,250 students in Wake County alone, did not advance to the 10th grade last year. That's more than double pre-pandemic levels. Now we have messages from the governor's administration, the NCAE, and Jim Martin hinting at another possible school closure. A recent Fordham Institute study found that Wake County ranks 48th out of 50 large metro area schools in educational quality. The steady decline in academic growth has only been exacerbated over the last year, but started 8 years ago with this administration. According to an article yesterday in the New York Times, data now suggests, quote, data now suggests that many changes to school routines are of questionable value in controlling the virus's spread. Some researchers are skeptical that school closures reduce COVID cases in most instances. Other interventions, like forcing students to sit apart from their friends at lunch, may have little benefit, close quote. The NCAE president tweeted out last year that learning loss is, quote, a false construct. Earlier last year, she tweeted that out. And the day of Chair Mahaffey's confirmation as chair, she was seen meeting with the NCAE president for some time, was the issue of learning loss discussed at that meeting? According to the largest survey conducted thus far, minority children will be affected most by this board's policies, not to mention how special needs students will once again be cheated out of services to which they are legally entitled. Social isolation has taken a toll on our children's mental health because of shutdowns. Ask any Wake parent trying to find a local child therapist for a child who is struggling emotionally or otherwise. They are all booked out 6 months plus. What has been your response to the mounting data and pleas from parents to actually do something about this issue of learning loss? You continue to claim immunity from the policies and problems that you helped create. There seems to be no empathy for our families for the spiraling decline in academic growth in Wake counties or the emotional turmoil inflicted on students. Families are bracing for this board to enact further marching orders from the NCAE again. If you need help figuring out how to handle learning loss, just go ahead and visit my website, steeforschools.com. I'm running against one of you in the upcoming election.
Thank you, Mr. Bergstrom. Lana Witt is our next speaker. Lana Witt.
Good evening, Wake County Public School Board members. For the last few months, I've come and spoken with you about my high concern for the fear in our community and where you stand in terms of when you feel fearful. What's that like? This is a list of over 50 school districts that have consistently chosen to create innovation and choices among the families and tax-paying citizens that they are elected to represent. 50 school districts across North Carolina. Wake County Public Schools is one of two most highly populated school districts, and yet repeatedly this leadership continues to choose fear over faith. We know that when we choose fear over faith, it reduces our immune system's response. We know that raising our hands above our head and taking a deep breath, or even smiling at one another for 5 seconds, increases our immune system. As we face the fear of a virus that has now been around for 2 years, I encourage you to ask yourself, are you a leader that seeks innovation and faith, or are you a leader that seeks fear and intimidation? Our students in our community need people that are brave enough to face fear with their faith. Do you know the long-term impacts, risks, and the traumatic decisions that Wake County Public Schools leadership continues to create? Every board meeting, you're making policies and decisions like tonight, a room filled with empty space, empty chairs, with literally hundreds of people wanting to come in and have their voice be heard. Tax-paying citizens, people that pay for the buildings that sat empty for a school year. Is that fear or is that faith? We elect you, we employ you to feed your faith and be the leaders that our children and our families in our community seek to lead us. Throughout history, those are the people that people want to follow. Those are the educators that we want educating our children. I want you to think for a moment about your own life. Who were the leaders in your life that fed their faith, their innovation, their creativity, and worked as teammates to build the community that you wanted to live in?
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carrie Bly. Carrie Bly.
to really put anything. Hi, Happy New Year. I've been speaking in this room and campaigning for better math curriculums for almost 3 years now. And we've been harsh critics of your district-provided middle and high school math curriculums because they're primarily task-based learning without historical math content to reference throughout the courses. We've been asking for a way in which our children can see behind the curtain, get the larger picture, organize their math skills, and take responsibility for their own comprehension. I would like you to consider this simple scenario today, and hopefully at all the other board meetings to follow. You had a work session today at 4 p.m., and then you had this official board meeting. And those are very much like classes in a way. There's a mountain of information to cover in these 2 sessions. You receive a very detailed, organized, linear agenda to scaffold these meetings, and you have access to the numerous PowerPoint presentations and reports that are being discussed. You can access this information digitally, and you can have it printed for you. You've printed it for me before in one of your back meetings. You move mountains to ensure that each and every one of you can follow along with the many important topics that you're learning about in here. What if you did not have access to those organizational tools, reports, and outlines? What if you were asked to take out a blank sheet of paper and pencil and spend those 5 hours only listening to these reports? You'd also be asked to be productive in discussions while physically recording all of the pertinent information that is being presented to you in 4 or 5 hours. You'll need to struggle, infer, discern, prioritize, and record your idea of what was discussed today and what is important that you heard this evening, with nothing to back it up. If you're unable to accomplish this, you can go back and watch those 5 hours of meetings and try again. And this is what you've asked our children to do in every single math course from 6th grade to 12th grade. What we have always hoped for our children in these confusing middle and high school math courses, what we have begged you for, is for you to extend the same students the same organizational courtesies that you freely give yourselves and us as guests in here. If I'm a mother at this podium for 3 years almost, and not a single person in this room can walk back there and print me off a sheet of paper that can show a neurotypical child or a special needs child how to multiply and divide fractions or work out percentages, then we should all be ashamed of ourselves. This is my Christmas gift to you. This is the latest version of books being published to help students when they need to see content.
Thank you, Ms. Bly. Our next speaker is Amanda Horlebeen. Amanda Horlebeen.
I look excited about that. All right, good evening. I am here to talk about several problems that we have in Wake County, particularly with masks and children. Our first problem is that we exhale 15 to 17 milliliters of fluid every hour, which is about a tablespoon. Over the course of 6 hours, this equals 3 to 3.5 ounces. This bottle has 3 ounces of water in it. This is how much fluid your child is exhaling into their mask every school day. We also have strike-through contamination, which happens when a particle travels through surfaces, through fluid, surgical towel, marker, which is wet, obviously. You can see through, just like if you were breathing and this was a mask. Another problem we have is CNN, the trusted research organization, now is saying that cloth masks are just decoration. It's shocking. They have about a 9 to 23% effectiveness rate. Then we have the N95 masks, which I passed. It has a 95% efficacy rate against particles that are greater than 0.3 microns. I also gave papers showing the size of different particles. So our typical masks that our children are wearing are not effective. Something else to consider about N95s, which are generally effective, is that they don't come in kid size. An alternative is a PAPR, which stands for Power Air Purifying Respirator. They cost $1,000. So for 150,000 kids, we would be spending $150 million. The responses from the board regarding the toolkit and all of this mask issue consists of, Wake does not have the legal authority to override state requirements, but the toolkit is a suggestion, not a law. The board supposedly can make their own choices. And also, the board wants to be sure students are in class, because if they aren't wearing a mask, they have to quarantine longer. And this resembles an abuser mentality. You made me do it. You made me hit you. You made me quarantine your child because they didn't wear a mask. In actuality, the state school Board of Education adopts any changes to the toolkit. So do you have power or don't you? Either you have the choice to make a change for the kids or you don't. You're choosing to take parental rights and following the commands from above instead of thinking for yourself and making your own recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie Long is our next speaker. Katie Long.
Your mask mandates, policies, and competency have burdened families, staff, and students. Our children have already suffered enough, and yet this mask mandate, the segregation of mask wearers, and mask-exempt students that is hindering on our children's self-esteem continues. The American Academy of Pediatrics recently declared a national state of emergency in children's mental health. The number of ER visits for suspect suicide attempts by 12 to 17-year-old girls rose by 51% from early 2019 to early 2021, according to the CDC. New York Times recently published an article entitled "No Way to Grow Up." Enlighten yourself with the findings in this article if you haven't read it. We saw many failures in 2021 in our schools. Let me mention a few of them. Poor academic performance, underpaid staff, school meal and bus transportation interruptions, obscene books found in our school libraries, and redistricting. You are in a servant role. You represent us, paid by the people. We are funding these public schools and paying your salaries. Parents should have a say in our children's curriculum. When did public schools ever start getting into a medical arena, advising and dictating on how we should medically treat our children? You need to go back to focusing on the fundamentals of education, like teaching our children math, English, history, and science. We are well over 600 days into slowing the spread, and it's apparent that the mask and vaccines are not effective. Vaccinated folks, with or without boosters, have tested for COVID, and many have been hospitalized. We have a 99% survival rate against the virus. My family and friends contracted COVID and have recovered from it. It resembles a typical flu. They took an inexpensive drug, ivermectin, one of the treatments that successfully treats the virus. Ivermectin, along with other treatments, are being suppressed by the fake media, big pharma, and doctors because it does not fit the narrative. The masks we are wearing, the ones we are wearing, it's about 0.1 micron, and the pores in the mask we wear on average are 80 to 100 times larger than the virus. We must protect our children. Every child is our child, the Muslim, the Asian, the black, the white, the pretty, not so pretty ones, because love has no barriers. It jumps hurdles, leaps fences, penetrates walls to arrive at its destination full of hope. Free the smiles and allow our children to learn freely.
Thank you. Our next speaker is James Patrick Walsh. James Patrick Walsh.
Good evening. Happy New Year. I hope you all had a great Christmas and enjoy your family. Speaking of family, I'd like to talk to all of you out there. I'd like to bring you up to date on some laws. North Carolina Statute 14-190.15. I think you all know it well. It's about disseminating harmful materials to minors, exhibitioning harmful performances to minors. Oh, there's another North Carolina statute, 14-190.1, obscene literature in exhibitions. It is unlawful for any person, firm, corporation to intentionally disseminate obscenity. You are given books. Since September, you all have been made aware of these books in your school's libraries. They are obscene. They show pedophilia. They promote that type of behavior. They are X-rated. If it was a movie, your children couldn't see them if they were under 18. But they are in our grade schools, our middle schools, and high schools. I bring it to your attention because these people are paid by us to manage our schools, to educate our children, which they are doing very poorly at, and also have broken laws. Many of us tried to file action for them to have the books taken out of the schools, but there's a North Carolina law that gives the school boards the capability of determining how they want to manage that process. That policy says it's up to the school themselves. And if a parent has a complaint, they have to take it to the principal, and then the principal has to do something about it and have a committee meeting, et cetera, before this book is taken out of the libraries. Stop to think about that. That's your children, their libraries, the books on the shelves. I'm going to yield my time so you can communicate back to your people why you're breaking the law and why you think you're so above the law that you don't have to take any action, even though it was brought to your attention since September and every month after. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Becky Lou Hobbs. Becky Lou Hobbs.
Happy New Year. I've had children in the Wake County Public School System for 10 years now. And in this time, I've been involved in my children's school and the PTA. The past couple years, the school boards endorse policies and practices that harm our children, prevent parent involvement, and adversely impact the education, the quality of their education. The first is that vaccine discrimination must stop. By now, we know that all people can get and spread COVID, regardless of their status. There should be no difference between a vaxxed and an unvaxxed. Furthermore, the school system can't legally ask for somebody's vaccination status. It's not as required by the state statute, and it falls under Health and Medical Privacy Acts. Next, the school board continues to allow principals to keep parents out of school. At one time, we were welcome to volunteer. We landscaped, built props for plays, a bunch of other things. But now, we're not even allowed to pick up our kids in the office. We have to wait outside. And according to the toolkit, right now, there's no distinction between an essential and non-essential visitor. So why are we being denied? We have a right to be involved in our children's education. And the school board's continuing this practice by limiting the number of speakers and attendees here in this meeting. Only 30 people in attendance total is ludicrous. It violates North Carolina open meeting laws, and it's an attempt to curtail our First Amendment rights. I've written you guys many times over the past couple years. Most of you never respond. And when I've spoken previously, the board's not paid attention. So tonight, I really do appreciate that you look like you're paying attention. This is a first. You need to be respectful to the people that elected you. We, the people, elect you. You work for us. Listen and respond. Lastly, learning loss continues to get worse. I saw a report last week on NBC News. It stated, new research by McKinsey shows that the COVID pandemic is taking a toll on education, with more children falling behind in important areas like math and reading. It went on to say that North Carolina was among the hardest hit in the country. According to this report, twice as many ninth graders were held back to repeat a grade in 2021 than were in 2018. Well, this is not surprising. 52% of North Carolina schools, which Wake County was part of that, closed. The national average was 9%. You guys have not addressed what is the plan to help our kids recover from the learning loss. Why are there no strategies being discussed? Previously, a board member compared the school system to a Fortune 500 company that was one of the best and very high regard. Well, if that's true, that's laughable. Fortune 500 company is ranked by revenue produced. You produce quality education. But student math reading scores have declined dramatically. And if we're one of the best, why are parents being denied volunteer? Why are we not being allowed to be part of our education? Why are their scores falling? Why? We need answers.
Thank you, Ms. Hobbs. Our next speaker is Edith Jones. Edith Jones.
Hello. How you doing today? I'm here to discuss sex education in the school. And children comes from the breath of God. Children that they're trustworthy, they trust adults, they're full of joy, they're full of faith, they're full of everything that's good. And they trust the adults in their lives to make good decisions on their behalf. They look to adults to lead them, whether in the school system, their parents, they look to us. They're very innocent because God made them that way. He created them. Children comes into this world not knowing anything. The book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah 1:5 says that I knew you. Saying that God was saying I knew you before. He knew us before we entered into our mother's womb. So that means God knows what this child is, and He knows what this child. This is a girl, and this is a boy. Two genders. But you, the system, has come and did what you wanted to do. You brought a serpent spirit in the school in the form of transgender, homosexual. I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the spirit. You've brought that in this school and to affect these children, and it has really brought confusion. God say you're a girl, but that transgender filth that you have allowed to come up in here has said, no, you're a boy. But you know what? But God said, you know what? This serpent spirit, He said, tonight, He's cut the head off that serpent spirit tonight. He cut the head off of it tonight. And you know what? Every one of you should repent for what you have allowed to come into this school. You should repent for what you have allowed to come into this school. Children are beautiful. Children are wonderful. And every spirit that has connected themselves to those kids, I tear it down right now in the spirit, right now, in Jesus' name. The blood of Jesus right now. This is evil. This is tyranny, evil, and God is tired of it. And you know what? It ends. You guys need to repent. It's going to end. It ends right here tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Our next speaker is Joshua Jordan.
Justice, real quick. Ms. Mahaffey, you started off this meeting with misspeaking. You said it was 2020. It's 2022. However, your policies that you and your school board have enacted certainly feel like 2020. Wake County School Board, my name is Joshua Jordan. I'm a Republican candidate for North Carolina State House, District 34. And I'm here to declare war. Yes, you heard that correctly. War. On you and the rest of the educational elite. Now, WRL, make sure you write this next part down. I do not mean a war of violence. No, no, no. I mean a war of words, a war of ideas, a war of legislation. And if all that doesn't work, a war of voting each and every one of you out of office. I'm here to represent the thousands of parents who are fed up with the tyrannical grasp you and the rest of the educational elite have on our great state's children, and to advocate for the teachers and staff who are victim to your imprudent policies, low pay, and debilitating work environment. Many of whom could not be in this room today due to a shady, and I mean shady, backroom meeting between your chairwoman and the board attorney where they deviously and cowardly decided to limit the number of angry faces they would have to see tonight. Oh, you know, another prime example of the Wake County School Board moving the goalpost every meeting after parents challenge the status quo. My girlfriend, a fourth grade teacher here in Wake County, has to teach 2 sets of 23 children every day. That's 46 children for you who are a little slower at math like me. Every day in a much smaller room. So I do not believe for a second this decision was made in response to COVID. If so, perhaps you all should consider shrinking classroom sizes to the amount of people allowed in this much larger room tonight. Oh wait, you can't, because it seems nobody wants to work for y'all. Consider the nearly 1,500 open positions on your website. You don't have to be dating a teacher to know that teachers and staff are leaving due to policies and lack of common sense from this school board. Just look on social media. This turnover in teachers and staff directly affects the quality of education Wake County's children receive, and I will not stand for it. It perturbs me that it seems like you all have forgotten that you are elected to represent us, we the people. And if this madness does not end, we the people pledge to vote all of you out in 2022. I truly hope y'all are voted out, because you do not want to deal with me when I get elected next November. Consider war declared.
Our next speaker is Kristen Beller. Kristen Beller.
Good evening, Chairman Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, Vice Chair Haggerty, and all of our board members. I come to you tonight to talk about 3 things. I'm going to get through all of them. First is to offer some appreciation for your vote in December to increase hourly wages for non-certified staff and to increase local supplements for our certified staff. These increases were a great start towards providing fair wages for non-certified staff, and there's still a lot of work to be done. Luckily, you have a budget season coming up, and so we're hoping to see and eager to see further local and state investment towards providing competitive salary and benefits that recruit and retain staff for a fully funded and fully staffed school system. And I just wanted to share a few things that in our conversations with educators in December, one of the things I asked folks is, what do the increases mean to you? What is it that's going to offer for your family and your household that you didn't have before? And so a few of the things that folks said is they plan on paying off medical bills that they've been, holding off on and trying to bargain with the insurance company on how to make those payments. that many of them have rent increases that have happened in the last few months, and so they plan on just being able to pay their rent without having to stress over it each month. Some of them said that they're going to be able to quit a second or a third job because of the increases that were given. And then a couple of them said that they're going to save for summer in case they can't get a summer job because of the COVID conditions, or they might not change anything about how they're living, or they don't have like a thing they have to pay off, but it's taking a fear and stress off of their shoulders that they generally have every month, just worrying about whether or not they're going to be able, if something happens, if there's an emergency, are they going to be able to handle it? So I just wanted to share those with you, that nobody, there weren't any responses that were extravagant things. These are basic living expenses that are going to be met with the increases you were able to provide. I also wanted to just share that the discussion today on your legislative agenda was really helpful in allowing the public to hear a zoomed out conversation about the needs of our school system, since we've been so zoomed in over the last 18 months trying to respond to a novel and global health crisis. And some of the things that came out around instructional assistants in every K-5 class and class size and recruiting our educators of color and all of these things that are directly impacting how we're responding into the pandemic right now, the level of staffing, the number of kids in each class. And the legislative agenda session discussion really shed a light on how our General Assembly's neglect of their funding obligations have made it really difficult to navigate this global health crisis for not only just the school districts, but also the families that are within our school district. And it was harder than it needed to be. Tonight, I'm not asking you to close schools, because educators do not want that to happen. We want to sustain open schools. I'm asking that you speed up the rollout of testing and provide N95s to staff to prevent the spread of COVID. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Colleen Fleming. Colleen Fleming.
Good evening. My name is Colleen Fleming, and I have two daughters, a fourth and a fifth grader. My name may ring a bell because I have emailed you a few times before. I received a couple of acknowledgments and replies, but I am here today because I feel called to do more for my children, for everyone's children. And I sincerely hope that you all will find the courage to see what is happening to our school kids is just plain wrong. At carpool, I watch the kids coming out with face masks that they have been wearing all day long for several hours, and it is heartbreaking. I think back when I was their age at York Elementary, so carefree and innocent, no worries, fond memories, the way childhood should be. I've been watching these board meetings from my home computer, and I hear the passionate pleas from both sides. No doubt those that are for mask shots and regular testing are as strong in their convictions and beliefs as I and the others who are pro-mask choice against mandates are. How could they not be? They've been fed lies for almost 2 years now. From early on in this pandemic, science has not been real. It's been political science, and some theater thrown in for that touch of dramatic flair. And it's worked brilliantly on some of us. But some of us have decided to do our own research, question the so-called science, investigate the facts, and speak the truth. Here are some truths for you today. These things that kids are forced to wear, and I'm forced to wear in order to speak to you tonight, do not work. There are numerous studies showing this, and many mainstream doctors are finally admitting that these face coverings do nothing to protect against COVID. In addition, kids are having a hard time recognizing and understanding their peers and teachers in face masks. Studies show that facial recognition skills are still developing until at least 14 years old. Furthermore, these impairments could lead to issues with communication skills, socialization, trust development, and a myriad of psychological problems. On that note, mental health issues and admittance to the ER among children and adolescents for those issues is up 31% since the beginning of the pandemic, while attempted suicides by teenage girls is up a staggering 51%. The dehumanization, isolation, and fear-mongering caused by all these mandates and COVID hysteria is literally killing our children. Understand this. Each and every one of you is complicit, in the deterioration of our school children's mental health and well-being and the downfall of their academic success. But each time I heartbreakingly watch my daughters and other children walk into the school forced to wear a mask and sit back and do nothing, I am complicit too. That's why I'm here tonight. I'm convinced that history will look back at this moment as a turning point. Either we fall like the Roman Empire, or we hold steadfast to the God-given rights, liberties, and freedoms that our founders envisioned for our great country and for our children. We are all only given one childhood. Let these children have theirs. Make things right again. Vote to make Wake County Public Schools mask optional.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Daniel Grant King. Daniel Grant King.
Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, and board members, good evening. I am Mr. Grant King, and currently I serve as the proud chair with the State Board of Education Subcommittee on Instructional Assistance, and currently I'm a proud instructional assistant at South Garner High School. On this evening, I would like to echo the words of Kristen Beller, our Waken CAE president, saying thank you for the raises that was approved by this board unanimously in December. I believe that was a big step for us all, and definitely instructional assistance. Of course, there's a lot that needs to be done to ensure this continues. And of course, I spoke with you, Mr. Haggerty, about some of that before this meeting this evening. I believe that when you make decisions regarding educators across this county, it is very important that not only you listen to the echo and cries from fellow educators across this county regarding certain issues, definitely when it comes to salaries, because if you think about the cost of living has gone up by I can't even imagine the number per se as to how much bills and all the personal costs that like inflation especially. So thank you for those approvals with the raises, and I look forward to that being approved probably this evening. Also, I would like to announce before this full board that I intend on running this year in 2022 for the late vacancy. Of course, Keith Sutton, of course, resigned and went to another county. I believe that with the years of service that I gave to Wake County and to the state, that I believe that I will be able to contribute a lot more to the community as a whole regarding teacher pay, regarding advocacy with our students, regarding classroom resources, regarding many other things that this board, I know, has in mind, definitely with the strategic plan that has been put in place. So hopefully, within the term or within the next few months or so, I will be putting more in place towards my campaigning. And once I do that, I will be stepping aside from my state position, probably within the next month or so to focus more on that. But again, I would like to say thank you for those approvals, and hopefully that you all will continue to listen to us, because we are in the classrooms. Not saying that you all are not, but please keep in mind that we are important as much as we love to serve our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant King. Our next speaker is Russell Lichtenstein. Russell Lichtenstein.
Good evening, Board. Fortunately, I lost my speech on my phone. Won't be doing that again. But I'm here again to try to convince you folks to finally take the masks off our kids. Dr. Martin, you and your numbers are, at this point, nothing but propaganda to scare people, I think. I study this disease. It's all I've done since the schools started the mask. I listen to podcasts all the time. I try to educate myself so that I, get up here and know what I'm talking about. And, this disease, we're trying to play God in a sense and do all these things when you just need to let nature take its course. I just got over COVID myself. It was like a bad flu. I was not I'm unvaccinated. Had early treatment, which no one speaks of. Also, no one speaks of natural immunity, which all of my family has, thank God. There's no reference to that in any of these emails I get today. So for some reason, what's the word I'm looking for? All the history of transmission and the viruses and viral diseases has all been ignored under the guise of COVID. Like, it's something new. It passes the same way. Everyone in here will get it if you haven't gotten it already. I promise you that. So this double masking and masking and all this stuff for our kids is just pointless. Let's get it over with. I'm exhausted having to come in here and, like one of my Patriot friends said, have a dialogue with you folks rather than just kind of speaking to a wall here. Ms. Mahaffey, you represent my district. I've never once gotten a response from you in an email. I'm not sure why that is. Nothing, just a simple, hello, thank you for your concern, nothing like that. So I don't feel heard in that regard. The reason I'm here is for my daughter and my son. My son's an athlete. The talk of these vaccines scares me to death. I'm privy to the same information everyone else is. It just seems like y'all don't maybe pay attention to that stuff. I don't think that my son, who's going to be an athlete next year in high school, should have to get some vaccine in order to play sports. I think that's extreme and dangerous, frankly. And having to wear a mask going into high school, and he doesn't know anybody, he's transferred to school, that's even more difficult. Those are the untangible things that y'all are not considering that I think need to be considered. So thank you again for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Dr. Tracy Taylor. Dr. Tracy Taylor.
Good evening. I've been speaking to you all for over a year now, bringing nothing but data, no political agenda, and just want to tell you the counties in North Carolina that are mask optional: Ashe, Bladen, Brunswick, Burke, Caldwell, Carteret, Clay, Cleveland, Craven, Davie. Oops. Sorry, I'm cold because I had to stand outside this whole time. Gaston, Graham, Henderson, Madison, Mooresville, New Hanover, Newton Conover, Onslow, Polk, Randolph, Rockingham, Stokes, Surrey, Transylvania, Wayne, and that's it. The last time I addressed you all a month ago, I asked if any of you had courage and honor to vote for mask optional because you represent 50% of families who would like to have this option. I'd also like to read something that was sent out to Duke Health employees in an email. This rapid increase in team member infectivity is largely due to the short incubation period of the Omicron variant, which makes it nearly impossible to pinpoint where and how the transmission event occurred in most cases. By the time someone learns of an exposure,
They are likely already developing symptoms. With the current rate of transmission in our community, it is reasonable to assume that everyone has potentially been exposed. I find that statement from Duke Health conflicts a lot with what Danny Benjamin is pushing for Test to Stay with the school board. Test to Stay is using rapid antigen tests, which are not accurate. There are many false positives and there are many false negatives. Additionally, families are notified on average of day 4 after their child has been exposed. 4 days. New quarantine policy is day 5. There is no reason for this rapid antigen testing, especially for children who do not have any symptoms whatsoever. Why are we trying to test people to demonstrate that they're healthy? Schools in Florida, Pinellas County, Hillsborough County, Pasco County, same size as Wake County. They are not quarantining, they're making sick kids stay home. They're also mask optional. But I digress.
Our next speaker is Chad Stahl.
You guys in your masks. This is fun.
But I want to be clear that there are so many sicknesses that I don't want children to get that aren't deadly. And COVID happens to be one of them.
That is your board member saying that COVID is like many sicknesses that is not deadly. COVID happens to be one of them. That's spoken by your board member, the one who wants to continue terrifying children and parents. I discovered this year, I guess you guys get about 60% of the county budget, right? That's what you get. You get like 37% of like the base budget, and then out of the 29%, you get an additional 20%, so 57, 58%, somewhere around in there. And I'm kind of asking myself a question because, I keep hearing the chants and I keep hearing the justification for you to mask children, inject children, quarantine children, prevent parents from going to work, prevent parents from being able to make income to cover the child care that you create the need for. And the chant is always like, our kids can't wait. You guys have heard that chant, right? I think some of you have heard that chant. I think some of you probably recite it at night before bed. But I'm trying to figure out, if kids can't wait, then why are they always the last on your agenda to address? Why are they always the last ones to get any of the funding that you suck from our system? You get the NCAE, and then you guys go to the commissioner's office with your hands out like this, right? Saying, oh, hey, you know what? We don't let kids go to school anymore. We didn't let them go to school for over a year, but we somehow spent over our budget consistently. So can you please raise the taxes on the parents that cannot even go to work because you want to choose who gets to go to school? So how about this? How about the children that don't get vaccinated? You no longer get their funding. How about that? How about the children that that only choose to get 2 instead of now this new stupidity that you people are obsessed with, where then they have to get a 3rd one? So how about the ones that stop at 2? How about you stop getting their funding if you don't want them to go to your school? Why don't you stand up instead of saying, oh, parents, we want your children to be in school, so, please inject your children. Please do that. How about let's flip it? How about if you want my money, you let my child go to school? If you're not willing to actually provide the service that you're going to go palms up and beg money for, then stop asking for the money. How about that? How about you own your responsibilities yourselves like adults do? Right? Did you witness the science experiment here at the podium? That is real science, right? We have board members on this board, I think someone from the pharmaceutical world who doesn't believe in informed consent, and a scientist that doesn't respect the scientific method. Thank you.
That is the end of our public comments for this evening. We're moving on to our consent agenda. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve our items on consent.
Madam Chair, I'd love to make a motion to approve our consent items as listed.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Ms. Kushner, a second by Ms. Johnson-Hostler to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Any opposed, nay? All right. Motion passes. Our next, moving on to our action items under policy. First up is Board Policy 4040, 7310, Staff Student Relations, first reading. We'll have Dr. Matillo and Kendra Hill and Dr. Crane. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, members of the board. Again, thank you for Kendra Hill, Senior Director of Employee Relations, for being here as well. We are here to present to you the first reading of revised policy 4040/7310, Staff and Student Relations. Revisions reflect updates made by the North Carolina School Boards Association. When given final board approval, it will replace current policy 4040/7310 for student-staff relations. It was reviewed at the December 8th Policy Committee meeting, and tonight we are requesting the board's approval of the first reading of the revised policy for student-staff relations.
Ms. Kushner?
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey, and thank you, Dr. Matillo. I'd like to make a motion for us to approve on first reading board policy revisions to board policy 4040/7310, staff student relations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, it's now approved on first reading, and we'll move on to second reading. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Next up, we have Board Policy 6320, Use of Student Transportation Services, and Mr. Mark Strickland is here with us.
Good evening, Chairman Haffey, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board. I'm here tonight to present to you the first reading of Policy 6320, Use of Student Transportation Services. This is a new policy created by the School Boards Association as a part of their policies to lead the schools manual, and it is a part of the policy migration project as well. When given final board approval, it will replace current policy 7105, Use of School Transportation Services. It was reviewed at the December 8th, 2021 Policy Committee meeting, and tonight we request the board's approval of the first reading of Policy 6320, Use of Student Transportation Services.
Ms. Kushner?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Mahaffey, and I would, on behalf of the Policy Committee, would like to make a motion that we approve on first reading Board Policy 6320, Use of Student Transportation Services.
Second.
And this will be, Mr. Strickland will be up there for a while because we did review 3 other policies about student transportation.
That's
and I
right.
think I appreciate my colleagues' patience as we've been going through this policy update that started under Dr. Martin, but we really are being thoughtful about updating these policies so that when the School Board Association and the state statutes change, we can have an efficient way of revising and keeping these policies up to date, because we want to make sure students and families can find the information they need around transportation focused on students. Thank you.
Next, we have, oh, you did. Sorry.
We have a motion.
Might be long-winded. I
That's
threw
okay.
you off, Mr. Strickland.
That's okay.
It's all right. We have a motion
Very
and a second. Some thoughtful comments from Ms. Kushner. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, the motion carries. Mr. Strickland.
Okay, next I'm here to present to you the first reading of Policy 6321, Bus Routes and Stops. This is a new policy created by the NC School Boards Association as a part of their policies to lead the schools manual, and it too is a part of the policy migration project. When given final board approval, it will replace current policies 7105, Use of School Transportation Services, and 7125, School Bus Routing and Bus Stops. It too was reviewed at the December 8th, 2021 Policy Committee meeting. You will find that recommendations made by the committee are highlighted in 2 yellow additions, and tonight we request the board's approval of the first reading of Policy 6321, Bus Routes and Stops.
Chairman Mahaffey, I'd like to make a motion to approve on first reading Board Policy 6321, Bus Routes and Stops.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Kushner, second by Dr. Martin on policy 6321. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The motion carries. Moving on to policy 6322.
Next up is the first reading of policy 6322, student assignment to buses. This, again, is a new policy created by the School Boards Association as part of their Policies to Lead the Schools manual, and again, is also part of the policy migration project. When given final board approval, it will replace current policy 7105, use of school transportation services. It, too, was reviewed at the December 8th, 2021 Policy Committee meeting, and tonight we're requesting the board's approval of the first reading of policy 6322, student assignment to buses.
Chairman Haffey, I'd love to make a motion to approve student assignment to buses, board policy 6322 on first reading.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Kushner, second by Dr. Martin. Any discussion? Vice Chair Hegarty.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Strickland. As you know, we talked about all of these bus policies in our policy committee meetings, and we had good conversation on all of it. We went through and were very deliberative with the wording, but, you know, sometimes folks in the community have questions about the policies because they only see what we're doing at the board meeting, which is usually just the final stamp on the work after we've done all the work at our committee meetings and our work session. But I had some questions from some folks just about, well, why don't we let students ride a bus to a friend's stop if they're doing homework together or they have extracurriculars together? And I was just curious, could you just shed some light on why we do restrict that?
So if we allowed that to happen, it would create havoc with bus routes. Our buses are already full, and so we would have to pick and choose of students being able to go. It would present some problems as well in terms of tracking students. We know where the bus stops are and where we let them off. So it's just good practice to keep them on their assigned buses.
And I heard sometimes there's a safety or security risk?
There could be with letting students get off at stops that we're not familiar with or that have not been approved.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Right. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor to approve board policy 6322, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Okay. Motion carries. And Mr. Strickland, I believe this is your final one.
Last but not least is the first reading of policy 6340, contract transportation. This again is a new policy created by the School Boards Association as part of their Policies to Lead the Schools manual, and again is a part of the policy migration project. When given final board approval, it will replace current policy 7160, contract transportation. It, too, was reviewed at the December 8th, 2021 Policy Committee meeting, and you will find that recommendations made by the committee are highlighted in 2 yellow additions. Tonight, we're requesting the board's approval of the first reading of Policy 6340, Contract Transportation.
Chairman Haffey, I'd like to make a motion to approve board policy 6340, contract transportation on its first reading.
Thank you. We have a motion by Ms. Kushner, a second by Dr. Martin. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Ms. Haffey, I'd just like to say I appreciate all the work that staff, especially Dr. Crane and Dr. Gardner and everybody put into.
Mr. Crane.
Dr.
Crane.
Put into this one because, as you know, we had a lot of debate and a lot of concerns about these. But as you know, we have family situations with joint custody agreements and others that sometimes require us to make unusual accommodations, and I appreciate the thought that went in, and I like this language that you've put in a lot, so thank you for your work.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving board policy 6340 on first reading, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? All right, the motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Strickland.
Thank you.
Up next is Mr. Coe with our action agenda item of Senate Bill 654, local face covering policy.
Good evening, Chair Mahaffey, Superintendent Moore, and board members. Thanks for your patience while I'm joining you virtually. I'm a little bit under the weather. Before I speak about our face covering recommendation, I want to reiterate Superintendent Moore's comments related to the updated toolkit. So NCDHHS released updates on December 31st that required changes to the district's COVID-19 health guidance about quarantines and isolations. And specifically, when an individual has been exposed to someone with COVID within the previous 2 weeks, an individual who's not vaccinated or has not received their booster, if they're eligible, they must quarantine or stay away from others for 5 days. And the 5 days of quarantine begin on the day after the last known contact with the COVID-19 positive individual. And this person must complete 5 days of strict mask use when returning from the 5-day quarantine, and they should test on day 5 if possible. And for an individual who was exposed, but they are vaccinated and eligible for a booster, but have not yet been boosted, they must quarantine or stay away from others for 5 days. And the 5 days of quarantine also begin on the day after the last known close contact with the COVID-19 positive individual. And they must also complete 5 days of strict mask use when returning from the 5-day quarantine. And they should test on day 5 if possible. And for an individual that was exposed, if they are vaccinated and have either received a booster or are not yet eligible for a booster, they do not need to quarantine or stay away from others, but they must complete the 10 days of strict mask use. Also, if testing is not possible in the situations described above, NCDHHS recommends, actually our guidance recommends that individuals should follow the guidance as though they are positive. And per the Strong Schools North Carolina Toolkit guidance, individuals who are not fully vaccinated do not need to quarantine if masks were being worn appropriately and consistently by the person with COVID-19 and the potentially exposed person after close contact. And so with this guidance update as part of our context, we are requesting board action to approve and continue the Wake County Public School System's face covering guidance with the understanding that staff is given operational authority to implement this requirement. Staff is recommending no changes this month to the district's current health guidelines regarding face coverings. And before we proceed with tonight's vote, we also wanted to provide additional context related to our health considerations. The slide assembly shows data from the morning of January 3rd, 2022. However, as of January 4th, 2022 today, the data notes that 68% of students aged 12 to 17 have at least one dose. 66% of students aged 12 to 17 are fully vaccinated. 39% of students aged 5 to 11 have at least one dose. And 30% of students ages 5 to 11 are fully vaccinated. And per our survey results from several months ago, our staff are between 80 and 90%. And in terms of positive cases, we have seen significant increase in cases as of December 27, 2021. And for our 7-day average, though on the slide assembly it notes that we were at 1,071 per 100,000, that as of today, actually as of yesterday afternoon, it was updated to 1,591 cases per 100,000, and our percent positivity rate is at 11.33%. And just as a reminder before the vote, in the FAQs for the Strong Schools North Carolina Public Health Toolkit, NCDHHS notes that schools should base their face covering requirements on levels of community transmission as defined by the CDC. And per the CDC and NCDHHS, community transmission levels are determined by 2 indicators. The first is case rates, and the second is test percent positivity. If the 2 indicators suggest different levels of transmission, the higher level should be selected. NCDHHS also recommends that schools continue to implement a universal face covering requirement if they are located in the county with high or substantial levels as defined by the CDC. When community transmission levels decline to moderate or low levels for at least 7 consecutive days, schools can consider making face coverings optional for vaccinated individuals. And also per NCDHHS, face coverings in school should be required for all unvaccinated individuals until community transmission is at low levels, when face coverings can be optional for everyone. And NCDHHS notes that they will continue to reevaluate this guidance as all school-age children become eligible for and get vaccinated. And as a final note around the CDC guidance is that CDC defines high, substantial, moderate, and low transmissions in the following ways. High is at 100 or more cases per 100,000 and 10% or greater positivity rate. Substantial is 50 to 99 cases per 100,000 and 8 to 9.99% positivity rate. Moderate is 10 to 49 cases per 100,000 and 5 to 7.99% positivity rate. And low is less than 10 cases per 100,000 and less than 5% positivity rate. So as of today, we are at 1,591 cases per 100,000 and at a 11.33% positivity rate in Wake County. And our current face covering guidance approved by the board on December 7th, 2021 are as follows. It is unchanged as of that date. Our face coverings for students at school for pre-K students ages 3 to 4, it is strongly recommended, while required for students age 5, even in pre-K while indoors. It is also required for pre-K students on transportation, and it is required for indoor recess and PE, while optional for outdoor recess and PE. For students grades K through 12, face coverings are required indoors and on transportation, and similarly required for indoor recess and PE and optional for outdoor recess and PE. And for the face coverings for athletics, band, and co-curricular activities indoors, face coverings are required during indoor activity, practices, and events. And face coverings are required at indoor competitions, both home and away. While outdoors, face coverings are optional, including bell covers for instruments. And face coverings are required on transportation, both WCPSS and vendor transportation. And again, our recommendation this evening is that no changes be made in current guidance regarding face coverings due to the recent increase in community positive cases and transmissions and following the guidance of NCDHHS. I'll pause here for any questions and discussion.
Okay, at this point, if we could get a motion for Senate Bill 654, local face covering policy, which requires us to do this monthly. Motion to approve.
Motion to continue the policy.
Okay, we have a motion from Dr. Martin, a second from Ms. Scott. Any discussion? Ms. Cash.
So I don't know that anybody in this room or anybody can answer this, but the North Carolina Health Department and the County Health Department, I guess they're continuing to treat vaccinated people different than unvaccinated, which is going to have to change, I'm sure, because vaccinated people are definitely going to get Omicron. But so is that just something that we follow? Because I don't know whether we're following the county or the state rules or what we're required to follow. I thought the county, but.
What we have been following is what's in the toolkit.
Okay.
So what is adopted in the toolkit is what the district has been following. The toolkit has changed just as recently as the end of December. The State Board of Education reviews changes on the reports that happen monthly and makes changes as well. There may be additional changes at the end of this week based on whatever DHHS might bring to them this week. And I do know that I'm not sure if we have confirmation from Dr. Tilson, but we are, the Tilson and Mushanga that we were planning to bring to this board meeting, we are trying to get on the January 18th board work session so that we can have an opportunity to engage in some of those questions.
So what's the county health department say? Do they follow exactly or different?
I think they follow they don't think they deviate from the toolkit either, do they, Paul?
Okay.
Yeah, Superintendent Moore and Ms. Cash, yes. The Wake County Public Health Department follows the Strong Schools Toolkit and the recommendations from NCDHHS.
And they're not any more strict than the State Department now?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
They are-
thank you. Okay, thank you. So we'll wait to hear. I know that vaccinations aren't going to, if you're exposed and you're vaccinated, I don't know how we cannot treat them some way, but I guess we'll see that come out in the new guidelines. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Cole.
Ms. Carter.
And kind of related to that, I'll just say it's disappointing that Dr. Tilson is not here. And I really hope she agrees to come to our later meeting. And if she doesn't at this point, I mean, that should be a big red flag. Because for me, I am very concerned about continuing in-person instruction for as many of our students as possible. And so I know I try to share looking at mask optional, and one of the 40,000-ish student population would be Union County. And just to compare them to their quarantine, because for me, a lot of this comes back to quarantining numbers. And I look, and right before their break, they had over 2,000 students quarantine. And their student population is well below what our population is. I believe it's around 40,000-ish. I don't have the exact number. I was trying to add everything up with their ADMs on their website, but pretty close to that. And we're at 158-ish thousand. So if you look at that, that could possibly have a huge impact. And I know the Test to Stay with Dr. Benjamin, the ABC Science Collaborative study had some information, but they didn't include mask optional districts in that data, initial data yet, and they're looking hopefully to have some of that information to have the bigger picture included later down the line. But I guess, I'm hoping that Dr. Tilson will come to share and answer questions and to provide, because a lot of times, that's what we are asked about. Is the quarantine, and why is it like this? Why is it not like that? Just change it, that kind of thing. So I think it would be helpful to her to explain what they are looking at. And I know that Dr. Benjamin sounds pretty confident about changes related on his, just going to say it, he did, based on his initial analysis of the 400 and some students in universal mask districts or schools, Test to Stay program, possibly adopting some changes with that. And then just looking at the overall picture and looking at percentages of those students who actually end up getting positive at all is what I've also asked Dr. Tilson, is anyone at the North Carolina Division of Health and Human Services looking at when you're talking at and again, I know he said some of this has included the Omicron variant. I don't know that those are his words. But looking at well over 90% not testing positive. So, and staying in school. So I think that's all stuff, and I really hope, again, that she does come and more information can be shared, and they are looking at all the data so that we can keep as many students in our schools daily as possible. So that really goes into, I know that was a long thing, but I think it's just a lot of information for folks, for me at least, that I consider when moving forward with what we're doing, because it does impact the mask decision. Thank you.
Dr. Martin, and then Ms. Kushner.
2 points. One is, as we're talking about masks, I think it's important to reinforce that I, and I don't believe anybody on this board, believes that masks are 100% perfect. Masks are one layer of protection. There's oftentimes statements, masks are not, going to stop everything. That's true. If you know anything about diffusion of particles, the diffusion is hindered by particles. Diffusion of particles that are much smaller than the size of the hole that things go through are hindered by that transport. Just look at the laws of diffusion, it's actually pretty clear. So people telling you that the particles are too small, they get through the holes anyway, go study the laws of diffusion. Masks are a tool, they are not a guarantee. But we need to use all tools at our disposal at this time. The other thing I'd like to again raise is, as I raised in my public comment, I understand that there are a lot of people who have no concern about the virus, but there are also a lot of people who do have concern about the virus. And well, you know, the quarantine, I think, is appropriate, working with the school system, with the Health and Human Services Toolkit. You know, I think the strategies that are being implemented are part of what we can do right now. But I think we really do need to seriously give consideration to the families who feel like it is not safe to send their children to school. Yes, there's the virtual academy. There's no way to get into the virtual academy at this time. And you know, at a minimum, I think we need to probably through the month of January, when the data looks like that's when we'll see the peak and coming down. We need to find some mechanism where people can, whether it's dealing with excused absences, whether it's, we have home health services that are provided to people. We had to do this before COVID when people were sick for long periods of time. I don't know what the solution is, and I'm not here trying to state what the solution is right now. But I would like us to very seriously and as quickly as possible get something in place so that people who have a true concern are not forced to put their kids into a setting where the likelihood of infection is quite high.
Thank you, Ms. Mahaffey. I was going to echo some of what Dr. Martin said. 2 years ago, this was just an emerging novel virus. We know a lot more now. I don't think anyone on this board is advocating for school closure. We've seen what that looks like. We've seen what cohorts look like. I don't think any of us are. We know that in-person instruction should be our focus for as many children as are choosing to be in in-person instruction, and that certainly has been my focus as a board member. And masks are a tool. Vaccinations are a tool. Good building hygiene and having healthy buildings are the tools we have available to us. None of them are magic bullets. We need to emphasize all of them to the best of our ability so that we can have more children in our schools every day, safe from spreading the infection. There are a lot of families who have immunocompromised members in their families, and school is compulsory for the children and their family, so they need to be in school, and it's our duty to keep them safe and in person. And I think masks are just one of the tools. It's not 100%, but they certainly help us reduce quarantines, which I agree is also a very important strategy. So I regret we have to vote on this every month, and I regret that we have to take up so much time talking about masks and not going forward, focusing on in-person instruction, the academics. The article that a lot of folks sent us today that was in the New York Times is very good. I would recommend y'all reviewing it, because children have suffered in this pandemic in ways that it's going to resonate, and it falls on us to pay close attention to that, and I think we are paying such close attention to that. I think our teachers and our educators and our staff are working so hard to implement these protocols, to show up every day for our kids, and we need to have empathy for our staff and our students and make sure that we're doing what we can to keep them safe.
Ms. Cash.
Well, so it's kind of a double-edged sword here, because of the fact, to me it is anyhow, because you do have people that are scared to send their children to school, and I understand that. You have parents that don't want their kids to wear masks because they feel like that's hurting them mentally, and they might choose not to send their kids to school and want excused absences as much as those that are scared of the virus. So then that brings me to the discussion of what is the expectation of the teacher to bring these kids up to date with their homework and their extra things they have to do for kids that don't come to school. I understand both of it, but if we're going to start talking about both of these things, then we've got to be willing to understand what it is that we're asking for not learning loss. Like, what can we expect teachers to do for kids that don't come to school because they are scared to wear a mask, or don't come to school because they're scared of the virus? So I have no answers. I'm really just trying to see if we can look at this in many different ways, because I think we'll have to extend that same permission to all parents that have concerns for their kids coming to school or coming to school with a mask. And then how do we take care of the children's homework by the teachers?
Ms. Scott.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the viewpoints brought by Dr. Martin and Ms. Cash, but because all discussion is good discussion. But I just want to say that for this matter, though, I think, that's not on the table, though, right now, talking about what to do. And I do worry about having different, I don't even know if legally we could do that, extend absences, broadly. I don't know that the law exists, that's even an option. And I, Dr. Martin, with all due respect, when you suggested that, and I absolutely know why, because I'm a mom with 2 kids in school right now too. But I immediately thought, oh my gosh, like the multiple lesson plans, because that's what was really challenging for our teachers when we were doing the hybrid. But I just wanted to say, but going back to the information that we have here, this is pretty grim. However, just a few months ago, looking at the data that is for the health guidance, which we've been following consistently, we said these are the data points we're following, and we keep coming back to the same data points every month and looking at them. And while today it looks horrible, I do want to say there was a time, there have been improvements as we started to overcome Delta. And we were able to reduce some of the, outdoor restrictions. We've been able to look at things. So there's progress being made here. This particular variant is not going to last forever. I'm just trying to be optimistic here because, my gosh, I've got to be optimistic here. So I think for me, looking at this information says we've got to, but for this health guidance considerations, for this mitigation factor that we have been implementing in our schools, I strongly feel that we should continue masking as recommended by staff.
Mr. Haggerty.
Thank you, Ms. Mahaffey. Chair Mahaffey. A few things I just want to add to this, and a couple questions if the superintendent is able to answer. I know that at our December meeting, we did talk about having a presentation about quarantine policy around the state, and that we had reached out to Wake County Health Department and to Dr. Tilson both. And my understanding is we did invite them, we did make the attempt, and we had fully intended to have that conversation, but they were not able to attend. Is there any thought to, as Ms. Carter had said, being able to get them here for a presentation in the future?
Yeah, right now we're asking them to attend on the 18th. So we've already heard from Dr. Mushanga that she is available. I'm not sure if we've heard from Dr. Tilson yet. But that is the plan moving forward.
And I thought that was correct, but I wanted to get that out there and just have it restated because, there's a lot of interest and concern about what we do compared to what they do in the rest of the state. I know a lot of you all have questions. I had questions about our quarantine policy, and then you saw that the guidance on that changed. And I know people debate the changes, but I think there's some good things in there if our goal is to keep in-person instruction for healthy children available. And so, Superintendent Moore, that goes to kind of my second question. We heard a little bit tonight from the public about, what they call, learning loss. And we know that students have been impacted by the pandemic and their time out of school. But I also know that we've done a lot to address that. And I didn't know if you could just remind folks or summarize some of the strategies, some of the hard work, some of the programs, things we did over the summer that we've been doing, where we've been taking this very seriously. For any schools.
So I think, so there was a legislated required summer program that was in place for all traditional calendar schools. I believe you've been sent some data on the number of credits for high school students that were recovered, which was a very large number, and the number of students that we invited, not all attended. The year-round program had to shift because of when we started the school year, and we paused it for a while and then have picked it back up. It will probably run straight into the spring iteration of the required program that was Read to Achieve in the past, that started in the spring for year-round schools. So it'll probably be like they'll have opportunities during trackouts all the way through the school year. We provided additional intervention positions to schools, specifically with the lists of students that exhibited risk factors through the pandemic, so that they could create individual plans for those students to help move them forward. Obviously, the number of support personnel like counselors and social workers that have been pushed out as well, because some of the learning loss, as they have talked about, has also is impacted by their ability to re-engage and engage successfully in school. So the addition of those other positions to support students and what that looks like has been important. We've pushed out additional information to all staff around MTSS and SEL to make sure that we are looking at the whole child and that we are taking care of their being ready for being in a learning environment, because that is the first thing that has to happen before the instruction even begins. And a lot of the COVID dollars have been used to support needs in schools as well, whether it is providing, a building sub every day so that there's some less strain on, as a permanent position, it's a benefits earning position, to try to reduce the strain on absences in the classroom so they can maintain consistent instruction. There are lots of other examples which I would invite any of our folks that are online that have available to them at their fingertips that I've missed to chime in on. But I think those are the big ones.
And I appreciate that, Superintendent Moore, because just because we don't talk about all of these all of the time doesn't mean that there's not a lot of work that has been done and a lot of work that's continuing to go on.
And I will say we are also continuing to look at, it won't be a required program or have the large number of students that were invited last summer, but an expanded summer program beyond what we would normally have done pre-pandemic. So
thank you. I really appreciate that. And then there's one more thing, if you all will accommodate me. We talk a lot about mental health, and that's been an issue of mine since I've come to this board. And I don't want to discount anyone individually who might be suffering from a mental health condition that could be brought on by any aspect of what we've all been going through since March of 2020. Anxiety, depression, whatever it might be. But I do want to get some correct and factual information out there to the public. You've heard a lot of people talk about the declaration of national emergency in child and adolescent mental health. And that is real. That is real. That is something that several organizations have come together and joined together across disciplines to promote. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychology, and the Children's Hospital Association. And we hear that referenced, but what we often don't hear is that they made very specific recommendations. And they've identified where they think the weaknesses in the system are. And they had 10 very specific points. Increase federal funding dedicated to ensuring all families and children from infancy through adolescence can access evidence-based mental health screening, diagnosis, and treatment to address their mental health needs, with particular emphasis on meeting the needs of under-resourced populations. And that's something we do here in Wake County. Address regulatory challenges and improve access to technology to assure continued availability of telemedicine to provide mental health care to all populations. And that's something that we've really tried to reach out, and it's been difficult in the pandemic. Ms. Carter, with some of the students that you worked with, telemedicine, being able to work with those kids in special education can be very difficult, but it's something that we've worked very hard to provide in an educational setting. implementing sustainable funding and effective models of school-based mental health care, including clinical strategies and model for payment. Again, this is something that we have continued to push for, and we have our adoption now of a district-wide mental health policy, and the state of North Carolina is requiring these policies and procedures. We are specifically going through, whether intentionally or not, the recommendations to address this state of emergency. Adoption of effective and financial models of integrated mental health care and primary care pediatrics, strengthening emerging efforts to reduce the risk of suicide in children and adolescents with prevention programs in our schools, primary care and community settings, more stuff that we're doing and more stuff that we've talked about. Address the ongoing challenges of acute care of children and adolescents, including shortages of beds and emergency room boarding, by expanding access to other programs for inpatient units. Fully fund comprehensive community-based systems of care that connect families in need of behavioral health services and supports for their children with evidence-based interventions in home, community, and school. Just a couple more. Promote and pay for trauma-informed care services that support relational health and family resilience. Accelerate strategies to address longstanding workforce challenges in child mental health. Advance policies that ensure compliance and with enforcement of mental health parity laws. It's being implied, though, that somehow masks are the problem, and that this national state of emergency in mental health is linked to our mask policies. And it's not. You hear the recommendations, you can read the report, and you can see that we all, the board, our staff, our district, our state government, are taking these issues very, very seriously and working hard to address them. Again, I'm not going to discount that anyone individually might be suffering from something that arises out of this pandemic, but I just feel it's important that we acknowledge there is this state of emergency, that when people give us this information, we do read it, we do research it, but then also to share what it says and show how we are being reactive and reacting to the recommendations that we're getting from these healthcare professionals. And that also affects my vote on continuing this policy at this time. Thank you.
Yes, do you have more? No. Okay, at this point. Okay. At this point, all in favor of approving the local face covering recommendations provided by staff as required by Senate Bill 654, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Okay. The motion carries. We're moving on to a familiar topic that we saw at the end of our last board meeting, and that is 2021-2022 salary schedules with Dr. Matillo. And we knew this was coming. So,
Yes, ma'am.
take it away, sir.
Mr. Nieder here as well, and may jump in, as well as Marcy Holland online for us. But I'm here to present the two salary schedules for the 2021-22 school year. Generally, we do put these on the consent agenda, but because of the complexity of all the increases and the significance of the increases, we did want to bring it to you as an action item tonight and just provide a summary of some of the things that are included in these scales. And just as a reminder, these scales are really a reflection and an implementation of the recommendations that you've approved already. So the first scale in your attachment and materials reflects salary changes that are retroactive back to July 1 and through December 2021. So there actually will be two scales. These scales include the average 3% step increase for teachers from the 2020-21 salary schedule and the local 2.5% increase to teacher and instructional support staff. Also includes assistant principal scales that reflect step changes for assistant principals along with the increases so that they remain 19% above the teachers on the bachelor's degree scales. And this includes a 2.5 increase to the assistant principal supplement scale as well. And then principal scales that include a 2.5% increase as well as a 2.5% increase to the local supplement so that they see a 2.5 increase overall as well. And then all other employees, including bus drivers, team leads, central office administrators, classified employees, will receive a minimum of the 3% increase effective July 1, 2021. So that's a overview of the first attachment, again, retroactive to July 1 through the end of December. And then the second attachment reflects changes January 1st of this year, 2022, moving forward. And this is some of our larger increases here. First, you have the minimum 15 an hour rate of pay that's established for classified employees. And then based on this new minimum, grades 17 through 30 are adjusted to include a minimum of 25 cents per hour between steps of experience, and then the minimum of 40 cents per hour between each of the pay grades. Previous instances of salary compression have also been at least partially eliminated in these scales, and we've shared, as we shared during the December 7th meeting, employees would see an average increase here of 5.3% all the way up to 43%, with some of our employees who receive the lowest rate of pay currently now seeing the highest percent increases. Bus drivers and regular ed instructional assistant positions were reclassified to be paid on this new grade 20, and then bus driver, team lead, and special ed instructional assistants also reclassified to the grade 21. And then central office, banded positions, technology bands, superintendent leadership team, those are all increased by 2%. And then lastly, you have the substitute teacher scales were updated to reflect the new non-certified rate of $115, which is actually effective January 7th to align with the substitute payroll period. So it's an overview of the scales, and again, they're really a reflection of the changes you've already approved, and we just want to take a moment to say thank you to the board for your support of our previous compensation recommendation. So asking for your approval this evening on these two salary schedules.
Do we have a motion to accept these salary schedules? Ms.
I'd
Cash?
like to make a motion to accept these schedules.
Second. We have a motion from Ms. Cash, second from Ms. Johnson-Hostler. Any discussion? Ms. Carter?
I just want to thank you and all of your staff for working over, I can't imagine, to make this happen and to give folks not only the retention and appreciation bonuses, but also adjusting all this and then going back, readjusting and checking to make sure that folks are paid at what they're supposed to be paid at when, based upon what was approved when and what's retro when and where it's going. So I sincerely thank you all, because I think it means a lot, so much to our staff, so many of our staff, and I just truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for that, and I'll certainly pass it on to the team who may not be listening tonight. So thank you, Ms. Carter.
Thank you. Ms. Cash?
I just think that we need to offer all those people a real Christmas holiday that worked all through the holidays. I'm sure that you guys actually didn't have a holiday, so I know everybody out there with finance and human resources, next year you get 2 Christmases.
And let me just add tech services to that, because
And
they
tech
have
services,
to roll
yeah.
over all of it. So I'll just reiterate my thanks to those 3 groups as well in HR and tech services and budget finance. They did have to continue to work during some of that break in those days, and they're still working now. I just got an email about the things that they did today, the things they're planning to do tomorrow to try to get it all done. And just as sort of a last piece, we will be providing all staff with a letter, information, something in Wake Connect that helps them understand what's in their January paycheck, and if anything needs to be in the February paycheck, what's in the February, so that they understand the changes and know what's coming.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. Any further discussion? Ms. Kushner?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was going to thank the superintendent and staff for the information that's been on Wake Connect. I think it's very helpful to have the FAQs and to keep updating those pages so that the employees can know what to expect and when things will happen. So thank you very much. And I also know that you're keeping a sight on that. You know, pay is incredibly important, but there's also the working and this is going to help support the working conditions, because we are hearing, our teachers, our staff are stressed, and we know that, and we know that students coming to us are stressed. So again, I'm so grateful for all of our staff members that are working so hard, and including getting all this together for us to be able to have some bump this month and going forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
To all my colleagues and Dr. Matillo, thank you.
Yes, and absolutely, 100% echo all that has been said. I did have a question, since we have two salary schedules. As these are posted, is there going to be a disclaimer on where they're posted as to which one was pre-January 1 and which one was post-January 1?
Yeah, and we have
Yeah.
that identified as drafts now, and we'll change it over, assuming board approval. We actually had 3 at one point when we had your first decision, so it's, it's been a little bit confusing, but we're trying to be as clear as we can on the website with what scale applies during which dates.
Thank you. Any further? Ms. Johnson-Hostler.
I'd be remiss, I'm sure Mr. Nieder appreciates me saying this, after all the advocacy. We also want to note that we appreciate you doing this in record time, because our employees do get paid in earlier January after years of advocacy. So this year is even harder because you have a shorter turnaround time. But again, just to echo my sentiments and gratitude for the work that you're doing on a shorter time frame than normal.
And with that, we'll all in favor of accepting these new dual salary schedules, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Thank you very much, Dr. Matillo, and huge thank you to your team and all other aforementioned team, Mr. Nieder, Ms. Gaddis, and just thank you.
We'll pass that on. Thank you, Chairman Haffey. Thank you all.
Okay, up next we have closed session. Yes, sir.
Chair Mahaffey, at this time, I would like to move that we go into closed session to consider confidential personnel information protected under North Carolina General Statute 143, 318.11, A1, A3, and A6. Also to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided under General Statute 143, 318.11, A3. And finally, to consider confidential student information protected under General Statute GS 115C-402 and the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, 20 United States Code 11232G.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair Hagerty and a second from Ms. Carter. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, we are now in closed session. Thank you all very much at home for tuning in, and for those of you who came to speak, thank you for coming.